Max Mayfield and your Chief Certified Meteorologist Betty Davis standing by. Betty, kick us off.
Good evening. No big changes in the intensity as of this 11 p.m. advisory. Maximum sustained wind still at 185 miles per hour. Pressure 916 millibars. It is moving west-northwest now at 15 miles per hour. That center of circulation about 50 miles east of Antigua. I do want to show you the projected path, and no big shift in this either. You can see as we're heading toward tomorrow, that continued motion toward the west-northwest, so coming near that north coast of Puerto Rico under a hurricane warning, and then that north coast of Hispaniola, all areas that still need to be on watch for this system as that core could come pretty close. And oh, by the way, it is forecast to maintain that Category 5 strength before perhaps dropping down to a Category 4, still a major hurricane as we're getting into Friday. At that point, starts to get between that north coast of Cuba, we'll say, and the Bahamas. So right up that north coast or just along it, pretty close to it of Cuba, we'll be tracking it. As we get into the weekend, it gets closer to South Florida. Now it appears it may slow down a bit as it starts to approach South Florida, but certainly by Sunday, it's within that vicinity of South Florida. Here's another view of Irma on the infrared satellite imagery. National Hurricane Center noting that it may be on the verge of undergoing or about to undergo another eye wall replacement cycle, so it may weaken a little bit, but not expected to weaken much. The bottom line, it's forecast to stay very strong. It's already starting to lash parts of the Leeward Islands as we see some of the rains and all that wind moving in on these islands as we speak. I'll close in, I should say, just a bit so we can get a better idea of who's getting nailed at this very moment. And that would be places like Antigua and Barbuda, and eventually Anguilla is another area that's going to take it pretty hard as the core of that system passes near, if not over, some of these islands tonight into early Wednesday. Now let's talk about some of the kinds of damage that can be seen from a Category 4 or Category 5 hurricane. Cat 4, most of the roof destroyed, exterior walls damaged, power poles down. Category 5, which is what Irma is, total roof failure, wall collapse, catastrophic damage. So no doubt, once this storm passes by some of those islands, the images from those areas will probably be outright devastating. With that, let's bring in our Max Mayfield to talk more about intensity and the projected path. Max?
Since this is sort of a record-breaking hurricane right now, this is not an estimate. That wind speed is based on aircraft data. NOAA and the Air Force have both been flying reconnaissance, actually, through the core of the hurricane, going in and out of the eye several times this evening. And those reports came from an instrument. It's a microwave instrument called the Step Frequency Microwave Radiometer. Anyway, that's an accurate instrument. It actually gets more accurate the stronger the winds are. So that 185 miles per hour is not just an estimate from geostationary satellite. That's the real thing. I want to talk a little bit about the track here. The Hurricane Center mentioned in their discussion that they noted that the GFS shifted to the east, but they're considering that an outlier right now. They're still leaning more towards the European and the other consensus models there. So the point here I'd make is that the only thing that I see that could really weaken the intensity is interaction with land. And it looks like on this track, it will just clip the northern coast of Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic and Haiti. That's probably not going to be enough to weaken it. They do weaken a little bit as it gets closer to Cuba because the track has it a little bit more of the circulation over land at that time. But again, that's only down to Category 4. And once it moves away from Cuba, the global models, I keep noticing, they let that pressure decrease very quickly after it moves away from Cuba. So it could even strengthen a little bit again after it moves away from Cuba if it happens to take that specific track there. So bottom line, we're looking at a really powerful hurricane, and I can't emphasize enough that the hazards can extend beyond the cone. And if you note this cone here, like the Dominican Republic and Haiti are just barely in the cone. They're going to get some tremendous rains, I think. When the flow comes in from the western side, even as that wind goes counterclockwise around the center of the hurricane. So there are going to be tremendous impacts over many, many islands, and that's going to go on throughout the week, I'm afraid.
All right, Max, another look at all the hurricane warnings and even watches in play for these islands from the Leeward Islands into Puerto Rico, that north coast of the Dominican Republic. Those are the red areas, and then the orange, those are the hurricane watches, which stretch from the north coast of Haiti, getting into the southeast Bahamas and even into Cuba as well. So we still have a while to go with this system before it starts that nearest approach to South Florida, getting into the weekend. But the key messages for South Florida: the threat of direct impacts, that continues to increase. The window of concern, Friday through Monday. 4 days away from impacts, 1 day away from a hurricane watch being issued for South Florida. And as we said at the top of the show, Irma is the strongest hurricane in the Atlantic on record. I'm sure a lot of you out there from Broward into Miami-Dade and the Keys would like a lot more specifics on what the impacts are going to be. Unfortunately, it's still too early for us to say that. Just know that we will feel the impacts of Irma, and we'll try to nail down those specifics in the days ahead, hopefully sooner rather than later. Lori and Calvin.
All right, Betty and Max, thanks so much.